Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 17 of the Merry Christmas Ornament tutorial. This is the Merry Christmas ornament that we are making. It is so cute with all its little lights. And today we're going to be making the unit called Top Lights B. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 16 yet, that's okay. You can do these out of order. I'll have those videos listed down below in the description. That way, when you finish this one, you can go back and watch those. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we're going to be using in today's project are all Miyuki Delicas. I have opaque black, silver-lined green, dyed silver-lined red, purple-lined crystal, and opaque yellow AB. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to call this black, green, red, purple, and yellow. We'll also need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire in the color Crystal, and then this is 4-pound thread. You could also use 6-pound thread if that's what you like. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. If all you have is a size 11 or a size 12, that would work too. For implements, I like to use my long nose pliers to hold on to my thread at the end of the video, and then I cut my thread with scissors. And then in the beginning of the video, I'm going to show you how I use the fire method to end the tail. We just need to thread our needle with about 3 feet of thread, and then we can get started. So I've threaded my needle and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads. Let's pick up 1 green, 1 black, and 1 green. Now I'm going to take those 3 beads and I'm going to pull them down to the bottom of the thread, and I'm going to leave about a 6-inch tail. Now let's make a square knot. Cross over on top and pull the tail through, and then cross over on top again and pull the tail through. That way we now have 2 loops. Let's put our fingers in the lower loop, and then we're going to tug on the tail thread and the long thread until that top loop turns into a little knot. Now we have our tail, and I'm not going to touch the tail with the flame, but I am going to get it super duper close so that it melts the tip. Just like that. And it turns the tip into this little teeny knot. Now I'm going to put my fingers in the loop again, and while I'm tugging on the long thread, I'm going to be twisting that loop until that knot at the end of the tail meets the long thread. And now I'm going to take my thumbnail and I'm going to pull that knot all the way down to the beads. And it makes the beads go into this little triangle, and that completes row number 1. So if you notice, the knot is right in between the 2 beads. So I'm going to tug the thread over to one side. So now it looks like that knot is coming out of one of the beads, and it also looks like the thread is coming out of that bead too. So let's pick up 2 black beads now. And our thread looks like it's coming out of this bead, so we're going to sew through the next bead, the one that the thread is not coming out of. And then we're going to try to get those beads, those new beads that we just added, to sit right on top of the ones below them. And I call those lower ones their buddies. So the new ones are sitting right on top of their buddy beads. Now let's pick up one yellow and one black. Now we're coming out of this green bead. Let's sew through the next bead. And once again, we're going to try to get those beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Just like that. Now let's pick up two black beads. And we're coming out of this black bead. Let's sew through the green bead and sew through the bead that's right below it, his buddy. And when we're sewing through two beads, what we're doing is we're stepping up, completing row number 2, and putting our thread in position to start the next row. So let's start row number 3 with 2 black beads, and we'll sew through the next bead. Now let's pick up one yellow bead. Now we're coming out of this second black bead right here. So you'll notice that the next bead is set downward. We're going to skip the downward bead and we're going to sew through the yellow bead that's poking up. We're going to be sewing through all the poking up beads and none of the downward set beads. So now let's pick up one yellow and one black. We're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next. And now let's pick up one black bead. Once again, we're coming out of that second bead. We're going to skip the downward bead and we're going to sew the up bead. Sew through the up bead. Now let's pick up 2 black beads and sew through the next. And now let's pick up one green. This is our last bead in the row. So we're going to skip that down bead. We're going to sew through the next bead and its buddy. Those are the last 2 beads. So we're sewing through those last 2 beads, which completes that row, and now we get to start row number 4. Let's start with 2 black beads and sew through the next. Then one green, sew through the up, one yellow, and sew through the up, two black beads, and sew through the next. Then one black, and sew through the up, one black, and sew through the up, then 2 black beads, sew through the next, one black, sew through the up, and one black, and sew through the up bead and also the bead below it. Sewing through 2 beads means we're stepping up, and now we get to start row number 5. Let's start with 2 black beads. Always making sure that they sit where they're supposed to. 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 yellow, 2 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 green, and 1 black. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 yellow, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 purple, 1 black, 1 black, and 1 black. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 green, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black and 1 red, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, two black beads, one purple, one purple, one green, one black, and one black. Sewing through the last two beads. And now we are up at the very top of our row number 7. Now this particular triangle is the top unit of our ornament, so this is as high as our triangle will get. So what we're going to do is without picking up any beads, we're going to just sew through the next bead. And that puts our thread in position to start adding beads around again. So starting row number 8 with one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black and one red, one red, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, two black beads, one black, one purple, one green, one black, one black, and one black. Now once again we are up at the top of our triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn over my unit, and now we can start sewing down this direction. So we're going to start row number 9 with 1 black bead, one black, one black, one black, one purple, one purple, one black, two black beads, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one red, two black beads, one black, one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, and one black. Now you'll notice there's no up bead to sew our last bead through. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn around. So what we do first is sew through that first top bead, and we're sewing in the opposite direction. So we're sewing down that top bead, and we're going to try to manipulate our new bead so that it sits where it's supposed to. Now sew down the bead right below the one we're coming out of, and then switching directions again, we're going to sew up the bead right next to that one, and then we're going to sew up that first bead again, and then sew down the bead that we just added. Now we're going to turn our unit back over, and you'll see that our thread is in position to start row number 10. Let's start by picking up one black, 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 one black and one green, 1 red, 1 red, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 2 black beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 purple, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, and 1 black. Once again, we are right on the top of our triangle, so let's turn it over. And now we can start sewing down this side, starting row number 11 with 1 black bead, 1 black, 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 2 black beads, 1 black, 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 1 red, 1 green, 2 green beads, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 black, 1 green, 1 black, and 1 black. Once again, we don't have a up bead to sew through, so we're going to have to change directions, sewing down that first bead on the top and make sure that our bead falls into place. Now let's sew down that middle bead on the second row. Then we will sew up the bead right next to the bead that we're coming out of. Then up that middle bead on the top and down the new bead that we just added. Now let's turn our unit over, and now we're ready to begin row number 12. Let's start by adding one black bead, then one black, one green, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one green and one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, 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 two black beads, one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, one black, one black, and one black. And that completes our 12 rows of our triangle. Let's turn it over again. And now we get to start adding our connection beads. So if this is the first triangle that you've done with me in this project, then you'll see that we have connection beads on some of the sides of the triangles, but every triangle is different. This particular triangle has connecting beads on this side and on the bottom, but it doesn't have any connection beads on this side. So in order to connect our units together, we have to add these connection beads. So let's start this side with one black, 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 and one black. And now that we are down at the corner, let's cap our corner with one black bead, turning it into a point. And now let's start adding our beads along the bottom. So let's start with one black, one green, one black, one black, one black, one black, one black, one green, one black, one black, one black, and now we're at our other corner, so let's cap it with one black bead, turning this corner into a point. And now what we're going to do is turn our triangle back over, and we're just going to sew up 6 beads without adding any more beads. We're just gonna sew through the beads. So that's just 1, oops, 2, and I'm just following this quadrant line right here. 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now I'm going to do what I call a zigzag. I'm coming out of the top of this bead right here. So I'm going to go down the bead right below it. And then I'm going to sew up the bead right next to that. Did I say below? Down the one beside the one that we're coming out of, and then up the next one. So we're sewing in the same row, 1, 2, 3 beads. Alrighty, now let's sew up 2 beads. 1 and 2. And now let's do a zigzag again. We're coming out of the top of this bead. Let's sew down the bead right next to it, and then up the bead right next to that one. And then we'll sew up 2 more beads, 1 and 2. Now I feel super secure that the last beads that we added are not going to get loose or fall out. So now it's time to cut our thread. Let's grab onto our thread with our long nose pliers, and then we'll take our scissors and get as close to the bead as possible without cutting the bead, and we're just going to cut off the thread. Just like that. Now we have our completed unit, and we only need one of these for this project, so I will see you in a second. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.